Konnichiwa, willkommen and welcome to this webinar session, Zoom in Japanese-German Energy Transition Talks, a series that is jointly organized by the Japanese-German Energy Partnership Team and the German-Japanese Energy Transition Council. Today, this session focuses on current developments regarding energy transition in both countries. We zoom in on the nexus of circular economy, resource efficiency, and climate protection. Before we begin, I would like to inform you about some technical hints of this session. We provide simultaneous language interpretation in Japanese. To access this language interpretation, please click on the globe icon and select the language. Further, in the second half of the session, we will have an open discussion and time for audience questions. If you would like to pose a question, please raise it through the chat function by clicking the chat icon and post it in English if possible. Our co-moderators will make sure your questions are assembled and directed to our experts. Thank you very much. The topic of this webinar today is the nexus of circular economy, resource efficiency, and climate protection. Given the breadth of this topic, we focus on scenario-based usefulness of policy integration between circular economy and resource efficiency to achieve ambitious climate change mitigation goals. We have invited two experts from Japan and Germany to highlight the different approaches and lessons learned so far. I will quickly introduce our experts to you. Chika Aoki Suzuki is a senior researcher at the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. She has been part of the Institute since 2007, and her research topics include resource efficiency, circular economy policies, as well as decoupling. Peter Hennecke is the principal advisor to the German-Japanese Energy Transition Council. He has previously occupied the position of scientific chair at the Wuppertal Institute and has been part of the initiating team of the GJETC. I will be your moderator today. My name is Franziska Erbe. I am a junior researcher at the Wuppertal Institute in the Department of Circular Economy. So now I first set the stage on the focus topic we will be discussing today. Unsustainable production and consumption patterns of an economic system of make, take, and waste have led to significant amounts of resource consumption and waste, both of which impact biodiversity and greenhouse gas emissions. Sustainable Development Goal 12 underlines that to mitigate such impacts, the current linear economic system must become much more than just waste management, and thus a potential solution is the transition to a circular economy. A circular economy means much more than just waste management and can be defined as a holistic system where materials never become waste and nature is regenerated. This can be done by designing products and materials that are kept in circulations through, for example, maintenance, reusing, remanufacturing, or recycling. This can largely be based on business models that replace end-of-life concepts with higher R strategies, such as reduce, reuse, and recycle, and thus change production and consumption processes, thus moving from material streams to material loops. Such a circular economy can contribute significantly to achieving climate mitigation targets. According to a study by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and Material Economics, a circular economy could reduce annual global CO2 emissions from 4 key industry materials by 40% in 2050, compared to a baseline business as usual scenario, as you can see on the next slide. This can thus help in achieving ambitious climate mitigation targets, such as the 1.5-degree goals. Applying principles of a circular economy systematically can reduce absolute consumption of resources and decouple it from economic growth, while lowering the pressure on climate and biodiversity. As raw material consumption is directly related to the creation of greenhouse gas emissions, it becomes clear that circular economy and resource efficiency policies have a strong tie to climate mitigation targets and policies. Moving to the next slide, we see that a policy integration approach thus becomes crucial for supporting circularity, as well as achieving climate mitigation targets. Coordinated measures for circular resource use and reducing greenhouse gas emissions help in achieving both those objectives more efficiently, underlining the need for more policy integration in the nexus of circular economy, resource efficiency, and climate mitigation. To effectively support such a transition, thus, policymakers must undertake an integrated life cycle approach that covers all parts of the life cycle of materials, from extraction to the product and waste. To see today how this topic is already addressed in Germany and Japan, we have invited our experts to elaborate on the benefits of this approach, current developments, and open questions in their respective countries. Thus, I first give the floor to Chika to share the experience from Japan. Chika, it's nice to have you. Let me start with the first question. What is the empirical status of the circular economy transition in Japan?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. And 日本の皆様、こんにちは。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。Yeah, this is the figure of the material for in Japan, and then this is a kind of the comparison between the year 2000 and 2019. As shown in this figure, Japan has successful to reduce the resource input into the productions and also slightly increase the cyclical material use compared to the from 2000 to 2019. And then also that we could be successful to reduce the final disposal as well. Next slide, please. However, Japan's resource input reduction is mainly due to the reduction of the non-metallic minerals in the domestic resources. This is caused by the kind of reduction of the construction of the big public infrastructure. Then, as you can see, the left-hand side graph, the other resources like fossil, metal, the biomass, it has not been reduced, not so much. So maybe that this is shown that we can have the more space to improve the circularity in Japan as well. Then you please see the right-hand side figures. This is a kind of the figure for the resource productivity and the cyclical use rate in the input side. Then for the resource productivity, Japan has successful improve the resource productivity, but after 2010, we are a little bit stagnant to improve the resource productivity. And also the cyclical material use rate as well. Around after 2010, and we are stagnant, and even getting worse for the cyclical use rate. So actually, we have to implemented the circular economy status in Japanese sound material cycle society, but still we are facing some barriers to further promote the circular economy transition in Japan. That is the current status. Back to you.
Yes. Thank you, Chika. That's certainly very interesting. You just mentioned already the need for more strategies. Could you give us a short update? What is the development of circular economy related policies and maybe also partnerships in Japan currently?
Yeah, thank you very much. So next slide, please. Sorry, this is some complicated figures, but this is a kind of the mapping of the policy framework for sound material cycle society, circular economy in Japan. Please see the, how to say, the right-hand top side of this figure. We have the fundamental plan for establishing the sound material cycle society. This is a kind of the umbrella policy framework for the circular economy in Japan to, how to say, which is the aiming the preventing natural resource consumption and the negative environmental impact associated with the resources as much as possible. This fundamental plan is now the fourth versions, and focusing the plastic resource circulation and then biomass utilization, metal resource circulation, and also that kind of long life construction buildings, and also some other emerging topics such as the solar power generation recycling, and then diaper recycling, considering the aging society in Japan. And now Japan is thinking to the fifth revision of this fundamental plan. In the future, this fundamental plan, circular economy transition context will be reflected further and further. And also that as the kind of the material-wise circular economy, we have the plastic resource circulation strategies and also plastic resource circulation act, which is promoting kind of the good design for the plastic product and also that the good collection scheme of the waste plastics. In addition to that, we have several other basic circular economy related act, including the for design phase, the act on promotion effective utilization of resources, for the consumption side, the green purchasing act, and for recycling, we have several specific recycling act. And also for the treatment phases that we have the long history act on the waste management public cleansing act. So that's kind of that we have the kind of several diverse policy framework for circular economy. In addition to that, the Ministry of Environment Japan has formulated the circular economy roadmap, which is shown that left hand side, which is aiming to develop, aiming to, how to say, establish the circular economy market 80 trillion Japanese yen in 2030, and also that the left-hand side, top side, Ministry of the Economy, Trade and Industry also has developed their circular economy related strategy called Growth Circular Economy Vision 2020, and also growth oriented resource autonomy strategies, and assuming the kind of resource security through the circular economy. That is the situation. Back to you.
Thank you, Chika. It's certainly amazing to see how much is already happening in Japan on the circular economy level, and also showing how important this topic has already become in the recent years. Then I would give over now to Peter to give us a perspective on the German side. And Peter, welcome to this webinar. Thank you for being here. And I would, as soon as the slides start, already ask you to consider the very first question. Otherwise, if you want, you can also already start a bit maybe on the empirical status of the circular economy in Germany right now.
Okay, thank you, friend Franziska. Good afternoon to Japan. Good morning in Germany. Let me give you at the beginning a short overview on the status and the trends of raw material consumption in Germany. The total amount of raw materials adds up to 1.3 billion tons since 2010, relatively stable. Same holds true for the raw material consumption per capita, which you can see on the slide. It's about 16 tons per capita per year, and it's of course higher than the global average. Also, raw material productivity increased about 2.4% per year during the years 2000 and 2016. There is no absolute reduction of the resource use and no decoupling, absolute decoupling, only relative decoupling of GDP. But the aim of the German government is to heading for an absolute decoupling, at least up to 2024. The circular material use rate is a little bit lower than in Japan, about 13%. And the target again is to double it up to 2030. Interestingly, the anthropogenic stock adds up to 5 billion tons. That means a huge theoretical potential for urban mining. But of course, the problems to implement it are still huge and challenging. For Germany, foreign trade is very important. The share of imported raw material is rising, and we are nearly 100% dependent on imported metal ores. So the dependency on critical metals is one of the key issues. let me finalize this overview by looking a little bit on packaging and plastics recycling. You may know that Germany has an effective collection and sorting recycling structures, but nevertheless, when it comes to the use of recycled materials in plastics for the packaging industry, it's only 10 to 11%. Mostly recycling goes in the direction of downcycling. So there's a lot of task to be done, and we look forward to policies to foster and speed up the process.
Thank you, Peter, for that overview. Then I would go already into the next question, which is there already scenario-based evidence on a German national level on what environmental and economic benefits and challenges can come from a circular economy?
Yes, Franziska, you mentioned on a global scale, we have a lot of new scenario work. Very recently, one for the housing sector, which has been done by the Yale University together with UNEP. And they all say that the combination of climate mitigation and resource efficiency strategies heading for circular economy will ease the main challenges to keep the temperature increase below 2 degrees. And this process is not only benign in ecological and climate sense, but also when it comes to economic and social opportunities. The left-hand side shows a scenario which is based only on climate mitigation measures, and only if we add strategies for circular economy, we can be on the way to 2 degrees and, if possible, of 1.5 degrees also. But interestingly, and that is the right side of the picture, there are a lot of promising markets connected with this direction. The Ministry of Environment produced and published a green tech atlas every 2 years, green tech made in Germany. And it shows a very strong growth of green tech markets, lead markets, which are always a combination of combined climate and resource protection. The growth is much higher, as you can see, 8.1 than the typical growth of markets on the global scale. And it's mainly renewables, efficiency, resource and energy efficiency, sustainable mobility, sustainable water management, and sustainable agriculture, forestry, which are included in these promising new markets. So it's not only an economic, environmentally benign to combine both and to have policy integration, but it's very interesting for economic competitiveness as well. So maybe we can step for the next, which shows the economic interest of the industry a little bit more convincing. If you look into the material cost share of cross production in German industry, it's about 40%. So it's a heavy burden on the economy, and it's much higher than the labor costs. So Germany is very much export oriented, as I said in the beginning. So the reduction of material costs is extremely important for international competitiveness. Material costs can be reduced drastically. This is shown by scenario work, about 30% up to 2030. And that means a cost reduction of 300 billion each year. So material cost saving could ease the pressure on labor costs and cushion social conflicts. Let me cite at this point Ernst von Weizsäcker, who has said, make tons and kilowatt hours redundant, not people. So it's very promising to look into this high share of material costs and to develop strategies to reduce them.
Thank you, Peter, for that very interesting insight and also highlighting all these different perspectives that there are in the potentials. Can you then give us a short update on how CE policies are currently being developed in Germany or have already been developed?
Yes, we developed 3 programs called Progress 1, 2, 3. And you can see very convincible principles which guide these programs. For example, of course, a combination of ecological necessities with economic opportunities, or of course, developing and expanding the circular economy. And what is highly interesting, considering global responsibility as well. In my perspective, this is a very important point because all the industrialized countries externalize a lot of costs to the global south. So we have to take responsibility to reduce the cost burden and the damages for the global south, but not only for the global south, but within our countries as well, when it comes to the split of rich and more poor households. Last not least, the 4th principle says that we should aim for quality growth. And this is a very important point when it comes to the economics of transformation. It's structural change, economic structural change, which might cause winners and losers in the region when it comes to companies, but when it comes to households as well. So it's very important to cushion the process and to get public acceptance for these transformative processes, and to look much more in social questions, not only in technological implementation. Nevertheless, these 3 programs have a lot of shortcomings. There is an evaluation of the Wuppertal Institute saying that the biggest barriers are the lack of economic incentives, the high complexity of the challenges, and inadequate policy framework conditions. So Germany is stepping forward to a new national circular economy strategy, looking more focused on areas of action. I was very impressed what Shika shows for Japan. I think Japan is ahead with a lot of acts and implementation activities. This new strategy is developed now, and it's supported by research on standardization and norms. And it's focused on these 8 areas, especially on plastics, vehicles, batteries, on buildings, on ICT appliances, and on metals. So we are on the way, but it's still a long way to go to reach a circular economy.
Thank you very much for the German perspective, Peter. That would already sum up the inputs, and now we could move into an open discussion where we have prepared some discussion questions, but also have space for potential questions from the audience. So please feel free to continue using the chat function to ask some questions so that we may pose them to Peter and Chika. Then I would open the open discussion with my first question. Peter, you've already just mentioned some shortcomings in the German case specifically, but let's take it out to like a global meta level. From both of your perspectives, what do you see as some barriers and market failures that prevent a holistic circular economy transition? Peter, maybe you want to start.
Okay, thank you again, Franziska. We must be aware that a really comprehensive circular economy implies a paradigm shift on economic theory and on practice, turning the processes away from take, make, and waste production consumption mindsets and the economic rational. There must be drastic changes. So there is only a stepwise approach possible to circular economy, but we have to speed up the transformation, and we have to scale up good practices and to tighten up regulation, which helps, and incentives which help the companies and society to go in the right direction. There are many, many barriers and market failures. There is no silver bullet, of course not, but we need a transformative policy package, and to select just some of the barriers and market failures. I mentioned the huge externalization of environmental costs. So we should limit them by internalizing the costs, maybe by a material tax. We have to reduce subsidies in harmful products and processes. In Germany, it's about 65 billion subsidies for environmental harm and subsidies, which has been calculated by the Federal Environmental Agency. We need finance, and we can take it by phasing out the subsidies. And of course, we have a lack of infrastructure for circular products and processes. So current business are used to compete. Of course, we have a profit-oriented competition, but a circular economy needs much more cooperation along the supply chain, along the value chain. So we must encourage the companies by smarter regulation to step in that direction. And there's a lack of investment, and of course, a huge lack of transparency when it comes to information and data sharing. And last not least, we have past dependencies from the old linear economy development, especially in the fossil fuel sector. Nevertheless, to step in that direction needs common standards for circular products and processes. But I think all countries, especially within the European Union, but in Japan and in other countries, in the US as well, are on the way to develop these standards. So I'm optimistic that we can speed up the process.
Chika, what is your opinion?
Yeah, thank you very much. I see lots of the commonalities from the Peter's comment in Japan as well. And then in case in Japan, while we have developed a policy scheme for the circular economy and the sound material cycle society, as I mentioned, and also that we have several good practice by individual level, but still the recognition of the companies, especially for the upstream companies, on the recognition on the needs for the circular economies. So that means the circularity perspective is not reflected on the product or the design, and it's not enough at this moment. So in that case, and also that the communication between the upstream and the downstream companies are not enough. And then I think that there is a lot of space to improve the kind of stakeholder collaboration to scale up the good business, good circular business model, and then also to have the adequate and the good quality recycled material. And then, as I started mentioned before, actually that thanks to the good policy development in development in Japan, individual companies has the good system for the resource circulation, but still it's the kind of individual level. It's not sector-wide, it's not industry-wide actions. So maybe we have more kind of the industry-wide collaboration or some kind of the regulation which encourages the eco-design or some utilization of the recycled materials is necessary. And then also that maybe I guess that digital technologies are helpful to facilitate this kind of the circular economy collaboration, but it's not well utilized yet in Japan. Yeah, back to you.
Thank you very much to the two of you for putting that in perspective. I will also be referring back to that later. In the next open discussion questions, I would like to ask you, after you've already presented some existing circular economy policies in your countries, zooming out a little bit, can you describe in there what are some of the most important policies and measures that you see that really support the development of a circular economy? Chika, can you start?
Yeah. So is it possible to back my slide on the policy framework? So my case, I believe that this is kind of the most important policies is the yeah yeah in the middle of this figure, there is act on the promotion of effective utilization of resources. This is kind of the encouraging the design and the manufacturing based on the 3R and the kind of the showing the label for the waste segregations. But the this act is formulated in 2001, which is the more than 20 years ago, and then while there is a minor changes, but there has been no fundamental changes which is fit for the circular economy transitions, and then this act is handled by the Ministry of the Economy and the Trade and the Industry, and then the Ministry of the Economy and the Trade and the Industry has the stated under the growth-oriented resource autonomy strategy. It's quite difficult to pronounce for me, but anyway. Under the strategy, METI stated the kind of their intention to revise this act to encourage the further private companies' circular economy transitions. And also that we have to, for the treatment disposal stages, there is a Waste Management and the Public Cleansing Act. This act is covering the waste management, including the waste transportation and also waste treatment facilities, including the recycling. So this kind of the policy alignment between the act for the promotion of effective utilization resources and then and the Waste Management Cleansing Act. Then actually, as shown in the topic of this webinar, both ministries are very keen to the increasing the synergy between the climate actions and also the circular economy actions, and then aiming to, how to say, upgrade their activities by the both ministries. So I believe that this kind of the policy alignment will be facilitated further in near future. Yeah, back to you.
Great, thank you. Especially that last point, I think interesting. Maybe we can refer back to it later. Peter, from your perspective, what do you see as key factors? You're still muted.
Sorry. Chika, I'm very much impressed by many acts which have been decided in Japan. As I mentioned, we have a lot of really good programs, but binding targets and acts are still missing. So I tried to give you a little bit an overview what is discussed in the connection of developing a national circular economy strategy up to now. It has not been decided. It might be on the agenda in the next years. First of all, from my perspective, we need a Resource Conservation Act, comparing a little bit to what you mentioned for Japan. But it would be useful to have binding targets as we learned it from climate mitigation policy. In Germany, it's discussed that, and based on scenario work, that the reduction of resource material consumption down to 500 million tons. You remember we have now 1.3 billion tons up to 2050 is possible. And on the other hand, the resource material consumption per capita could be reduced at least by 50%. So these could be targets, but there is still no decision on these targets, I think it would help to speed up the process. Second, in my opinion, we need an extended transformative circular economy governance. As I mentioned, it's a paradigm shift. And that means that we need maybe a new institutional body who oversees and guides the transformation to a circular economy, which gets a mandate to steer and coordinate the process and take over responsibility that we reach ambitious targets. Nevertheless, a most important point is to give incentives for the change in values in companies to develop and implement circular business models. And maybe we need a complete adaptation of our regulatory design. As you know, we are part of the European Union. We have a very promising EU Eco-Design Directive. So circular strategies should be included. From my opinion, we need a more extended producer responsibility when it comes to product guarantees and to take back systems, maybe a waste prevention plan. Last not least, it's necessary to intensify green public procurement, because this gives a lot of examples and can be really convincing and speed up the process. When it comes to information and more transparency, I think a digital product ID, the development for many products and processes, is very helpful to promote radical innovation and new business models. And last not least, it's very important to get public acceptance. That means we have to cushion detrimental impacts, harmful impacts of structural change, to take really everybody on board. And we learn from participation processes or missing participation processes now in the energy transition that it's extremely important to see economical, ecological transition processes always in combination with the social question. We don't let anybody behind. That's really important, and it's often a phrase which has been pushed on the agenda in the European Union, but in practice, sometimes we forget it.
Great, thank you, Peter and Chika. I would now intersect with a question that we've received from the chat because it relates a bit to policies, and would like to see if you have an opinion on that. The question was, do you think that protective trade policies should complement industry-targeted circular economy policies? From your perspective, would like to start maybe an opinion on that.
So can you give me some clarification? What do you mean the protective trade policies?
Actually, the question was phrased like this in the chat. I am not entirely sure what they mean by that either.
Yeah, but yeah, okay. Then if I get the intention of the questions, I think. Yeah, I think in case of the Japan, that we need some kind of the resource security programs, and then so in that sense, maybe the we are some kind of the necessity to have then have the how to say that the collect our domestic recycled resources in Japan to encourage some kind of circular economy business model. Sometimes our recycled resources is exported to, and then we cannot secure the enough amount of the recycled recycled materials, which means they're kind of the how to say, this is a discouraging the recycling company in Japan. So in that sense, maybe some kind of the how to say, encouraging the domestic resource circulations would be the necessary, and also that the kind of the how to say, making small closed loop is the could contribute to the reduce the environmental impact as well. So this kind of the protective trade policies would be the one of the options. But I'm not sure free trade issues is still there, but in case of the encouraging and also that increasing the market of the circular economy at the domestic level, that this kind of the approach is also one of the options. Yeah, back to you.
Peter, do you want to add to that? You're still?
Yes, I agree to the position of Chika. Maybe I can add 2 points when it comes to differences between maybe border adjustments in climate protection activities. When we raise the carbon tax and when we see that Germany is really very dependent on foreign, not only Germany, but the European Union as well is dependent on foreign trade, there must be some kind of protection mechanism to avoid carbon leakage. But the background is that the tax will increase the price of energy, and up to the point where renewable energy will undercut the costs of fossil fuels. We are on the way, by the way, not only in sunny regions or regions with a lot of wind, but in Germany as well. When it comes to more resource efficient products and processes, technologies, my deep conviction is that they will be cheaper. And we will need a cooperation and partnership with the developing countries, with the Global South, to help them to leapfrog as quick as possible to more advanced and resource efficient products and processes. Otherwise, we get a competition, and it could be harmful for the development in the Global South.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Chika. I would now go over, but we have received quite a lot of questions now in the chat that are also some of them relating more to the business and the private sector side. And maybe as one question has asked, could you, one of you or both of you, explain about the concept of eco-design as an explanation for some of our participants in the webinar today? What is meant by this?
Maybe I should start. We have a directive on the European level for energy using products, deciding on standards, only standards, not a competition process like the top runner process in Japan, but the standards will be adapted step by step. But it's only energy at the beginning. Now we are stepping forward to take circular economy perspectives on board. And when it comes to energy, this design was very, very powerful and helped to increase technical progress together with some economic measures and rebate programs when it comes to appliances, for example. Now, it's important to look a little bit broader into the total footprint of processes, not only energy, but taking material on board and putting standards on them. You can imagine this is a complicated process, much more complicated when it comes only to energy. but we are on the way, and I hope this new target setting and standard setting on the European Union side will help to adapt German policies to speed up the process.
Okay, great. Thank you for that explanation, Peter. Then I would go over to another question we have from the chat that is also similar to an interesting point we were going to raise, which is, can you give some concrete examples of good practices in Germany and Japan which were successful in creating appropriate economic incentives in circular economy? Or also maybe then, can you give some best practice examples of successful circular business models in your countries that are already happening? Chika, do you want to take the floor?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the questions regarding the economic incentives in circular economy. At this moment, I think is not ready in Japan. I think there is several specific recycling act under the extended producer responsibility. But this is a kind of still the mandatory requirement for producers to pay monetary requirement to encourage the recycling activities for the recycling activities at the domestic level, but at this moment, the Act for the Resource Utilization is the kind of the encouraging their plan for the 3R, which is a reduce, reuse, recycle, but it's not clearly encourages the circular product design. So I think that some kinds of the economic incentives to promote the product circularity design would be necessary in Japan. But actually there is one exception, which is plastic resource circulations. This is as shown in my figures, the Plastic Resource Circulation Act is the very new act on circular economy in Japan. Under this act, there is some kind of the certification scheme that which have the good product design on the plastic products. And then if the companies pass this kind of the evaluations, that they can be certified as a good circular plastic products. So this is one example of the economic incentives in circular economy, but this is just started. There is no concrete products which was evaluated yet. So I hope the good products will be increased in the future. And then regarding the very good practice of the company level, there is a lot of examples in Japan, but as I said, there's many of the individual level efforts, but actually there is the collaborative action for the circular economy is increasing, such as the kind of the a certain number of the companies has established the pet recycling companies for some years ago. And also that some kinds of the collaborative action for the plastic product collection together with the daily products companies such as the shampoo and the rinse, and also the municipality for the collection scheme, and also that this kind of a take back plastic package system is established. So, and actually Japan has established the Japan Partnership for Circular Economy, JFORCE. Then under the in the website of the JForce, there is a lot, you can see the lots of the activities by the Japanese companies on this kind of the circular related business. So please go to the website to find the good example in Japan. I will send the URL in the chat in the later timings. Back to you.
Great, thank you, Chica. Peter, do you have one concrete example, maybe from Germany, you can quickly elaborate?
That's a challenge, Franziska, to pick out only one. Let me mention very briefly 3 of them. One is we have to step down to the region and to the regional and municipality area when it comes to take small and medium enterprises on board. That's a big challenge, but it's highly promising. We have an initiative called EcoProfit, which came from Austria. And now about 4,000 small and medium, especially small and medium enterprises, and 100 municipalities work together to reduce not only energy, but water and material and waste as well. And this is highly profitable, especially in my region, in North Rhine-Westphalia. It's a very promising initiative, and it worked without any incentive, just by training, just by giving advice, just by founding new alliances between the municipalities, sometimes research, and the companies. The second one is how can we speed up startups which are working on resource efficient and circular economy strategies. We have a very interesting initiative in Wuppertal, the city where the Wuppertal Institute is based. It's called Circular Valley. And each year, about 50 or more startups all over the world were invited and supported to present their ideas and to connect them with regional and national companies. That's a highly successful process. It's very inspiring, and it's extremely innovative to bring new ideas in the agenda. And maybe a third one, also from North Rhine-Westphalia. As I said, we need implementing agencies to help companies, especially small and medium companies, to step forward. We have an efficiency agency which gives audits and incentives for small and medium enterprises to look into the potentials of resource efficiency and energy efficiency. And again, it's a highly successful process which works very well. Let me stop by mentioning just one international good practice example. We need more alliances between companies and research. I'm a member of a board in Sweden called Mistra REES, which is a bottom-up experience, maybe the biggest one in the world, to bring big companies together with the leading universities in Sweden, which is Chalmers, Lund, and Linköping, and to speed up processes by developing business cases, business models, by developing design tools, because at the design stage, about 80% of the footprint is decided, and to develop new umbrella and frame conditions which help companies to speed up the process. By the way, there are many, many other examples, but I will stop here because we are running out of time.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Sorry, can I add one more thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, if maybe sorry the time is running out, but in case of the not only the resource promotion effective resource promotion of effective utilization of resources for the waste managing and the public cleansing act, there is if the actors is promoting the recycling and also the creating recycled resources, if the stakeholders submit the plan to the government, they can, how to say, skip some requirement under the act, and then also that they can speed up the process to start up the recycling activities. That is another example for the incentives. Thank you. Back to
Great.
you.
We have already reached the final 5-minute stretch of this webinar. So I would like to leave Peter and Chika with the opportunity to send a final message, but also maybe to answer a final question. This session is very much focused on Germany and Japan, their perspectives, but also about how we can learn with and from each other as two countries. So maybe in your main message, could you also include a reflection on how can Germany and Japan work together to support and transition to a circular economy? Thank you. Either of you may take the stage.
Yeah, thank you very much again. I'm muted, yeah. As I mentioned, we have a lot of scenario-based evidence that about 70% of material could be reduced in combination with staying below the 2-degree targets. That's a very important message, just to mention it again. We have the big chance to contribute to problem solving of interlinked crisis. That means climate change, biodiversity, and maybe plastic waste as well. And this is also a very strong plea for ecological, economic, social benefits, which comes from policy integration. When I should summarize maybe some ideas of beyond circularity, I would recommend 5 points. First one, of course, resource efficiency, absolute decoupling should be the main aim. Resource efficiency is very essential in combination with greenhouse gas mitigation. But again, we have to develop sufficiency policies as well. Look into lifestyles and support people, enable people and companies to step in more sustainable consumption and production patterns. So we need integrated policy approaches, and of course we need integration on across policy levels. And last not least, we need cooperation as we have it with the GJETC. I'm very proud and I'm very encouraged by our knowledge exchange between Japan and Germany. This is focused up to now on energy, but we should enlarge our agenda to take material efficiency and circular economy on board.
Thank you, Peter. Over to you, Chika.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me this kind of a great opportunity again. I totally agree with the Peter's comment on the rebound to the sufficiency on the also needs for the absolute decoupling as well. And actually that as Peter's also slightly touched on, the circular economy has lots of potential to contribute to the address the climate change issues, biodiversity loss, and then pollutions. And then I believe this is a kind of the risk reduction for the companies. So I think that's why there are some questions, how can we convince the top management for the circular economy? But I think the circular economy can greatly contribute this kind of risk reduction and also the creating the business opportunities for the relevant to the sustainable development. But there is risk to, how to say, we are too much focusing on the recycling, but there is lots of opportunities to contribute the sufficiency through the other our strategies like remanufacturing product or as a service model, and then new other business model relevant to the circular economies. And then actually there is lots of the commonalities of the social and the economic structure between the Japan and the Germany. So I think the how to say that the focusing these commonalities that we are very much I'm very much expecting to have the further collaborating to think about how we can facilitate the good, how to say, for the good well-being circular economy transitions. Yeah, thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Chika. That's then the final wrap-up of this session. we have seen that there is a lot going on already. There are some good best practice examples. There are some policies. There is also, of course, still a long way to go, but we're on a good way of making it happen. Thus, I thank you all for your interested participation in this webinar session today. And I hope you gained some interesting insights into the importance of tackling climate mitigation and resource efficiency and circular economy with a Nexus approach. The next Zoom-in webinar session will be on the 25th of October, and we'll discuss the topic of critical minerals and supply chains, and we are looking forward to your participation. Then I say thank you again to Peter, thank you again for Chika for being here today, giving us your very valuable insights, and thank you everyone, and goodbye.